Thank you for joining this virtual session. Today I'm going to share Houghton Library's Slavery, Abolition, Emancipation, and Freedom project, focusing on developing a learning-based remote workflow that centers Black history. This presentation will start off with some background on the project, with necessary context around the collections and digitization locally, before moving on to the project goals. The bulk of the time will be spent on those new, for us, workflows and deliverables, and I'll end with some takeaways. I want to say at the outset that, of course, what's new for us might be old hat for you, and what's feasible with our resources might be out of reach for yours. I've chosen to illustrate the talk with portraits from the various self-published and or self-composed biographies of formerly enslaved people we've digitized for this project. The portraits are entirely of men and are primarily from the mid to late 19th century. This has to do both with what was published at the time and what was collected by Harvard libraries, but I also do want to acknowledge at the outset how that aligns the experiences of enslaved women, children, and others. Houghton Library, the largest for a books and manuscript repository within Harvard libraries, the largest academic library in the world, has been working on improving the diversity of its collections, programming, and staff with the goal of a more inclusive and welcoming environment. To be working on something, of course, implies that the starting point is something of the opposite from the goal, which was clear from the racial and class homogeneity of our digital collections. Our collection building model has traditionally come from curator-supplied proposals, which have historically focused on treasure collections, illuminated manuscripts, Emily Dickinson's personal papers, etc. And what is worthy of treasuring has been reimagined within academia. It has become clear that students and faculty are demanding more access to African American special collections. In response to a wellspring of these righteous demands in the summer of 2020, I proposed a pause to our 14 ongoing digital projects and a refocus on creating digital access to our rare and unique materials relating to Black history. While the project was eventually approved, it was during the most difficult working period of my generation, to say the least. We were working on a budget freeze to anything new needed for the project. The majority of our staff was working remote, both at Houghton and in Harvard's larger departments, including the Imaging Services Department. And most importantly, it was a period of deeply traumatic personal and global experiences. When I was able to get on site, about 3 months after the project's year-long approval, it was immediately clear that the records we pulled from the catalog system did not at all match the items resting on our shelves. We also, at the time, did not have strong internet access in those stacks, meaning that all of the initial spreadsheets we created at home were not easily accessible when looking at the non-matching shelves. Facing those varied obstacles, I still had some pretty big dreams for the project, which we've shortened down to SAEF. Houghton has a strong reputation for its holdings, but I had heard time and time again from our own curators that there wasn't very much material related to African American history. Part of that feeling traced to a lack of awareness of the thousands of materials that had been transferred to Houghton as they aged from circulation into rare books. Many of these took the form of bound pamphlet ephemera volumes that were cataloged by the first title alone. What looked to be one item in our catalog was potentially 25. By building a workflow to catalog these for digitization, we were able to add hundreds of items by and about Black people to the public catalog. Pulling together across collecting units and time periods also helped to reimagine what our strengths are. When viewed as a group, we suddenly had a very strong collection of 19th century Black authored novels, of colored conventions proceedings, of anti-slavery society publications. While we might have always said we were strong and white New England abolitionists, we now have a better understanding of the Black correspondents who wrote to them. The biggest dreams reached outside of our local repository. Putting Harvard's name behind this project was a shot across the bow to our peer institutions, who have often done less than other peers with fewer resources to center Black history. I also wanted, following Sophie Ziegler's instructive work on anti-racist digital humanities, to use this project to have Black history collections at the center of new workflow development at Houghton, and across divisions including research data management, imaging services, and digital scholarship. I've mentioned new workflows a few times already, but other than digitizing Black history materials, I haven't detailed the deliverables those workflows were planned to lead to. I think of those paths growing out into different directions: in, out, up, down. Our initial planned outcomes were reaching in and out, providing internal planning to improve external access. The two public-facing pieces were a downloadable dataset with information about each digitized item in the SAEF collection, and a spotlight-based digital collection site presenting the material with contextualizing information about its provenance, its creators, and how it ended up at Houghton. Building all of this research data required more than just one person, and so I developed an internal team from across our library. Assistant Curator of Modern Books and Manuscripts Christine Jacobson, Digital Archivist Monique Lazier, and Reference Librarian Michael Hoggart. While my colleagues were excited to join this project, none of them had a focused background in African American history, Black collecting, or Black digital humanities. We were able to build readings and discussions with newly conversant staff, as well as creating newly conversant material. Those were our initial plans, and while they were pretty big, when we had the opportunity to do more, we jumped on it. Harvard Libraries introduced a new grant funding opportunity for diversity advancing projects with about 3 months into SAEF, and I knew that there were more directions we could pursue if we had access to that $2,000. The grant, which was eventually approved, funded 5 students ranging from undergrad to doctoral to write the site's interpretive text, providing an opportunity to engage students in our collection and to make us take a strong stance against library authoritative voice. Each student was allowed to write in their own voice, pick their own materials to highlight. They created 5 unique looks into Black history from the 1600s to the turn of the 20th century, and they will be presented from those unique vantages. We also wanted to reach out beyond Harvard, and we were able to hire Mecker Aponte, an educational consultant who was working with Boston Public Schools on their Black Studies curriculum, to create a middle grade learning unit centered on digitized primary sources from the collection, which will be available freely on the site. We were also able to expand the dataset from a downloadable flat sheet into both a lookup table and a series of tags for a new collection in Harvard's Dataverse, where users will be able to download the entire collection at the level of JP2000s, METS files, and OCR text files. An overarching desire for this project was not just to reach out to the users we already have directly in front of us, but to expand our connections and skill sets to reach new patrons, be they 7th graders designing a History Day project or postdocs wanting to download thousands of images for computational research. I'm still finishing up the last ties of this project, but should be launching the digital collections site in November with the full collection in Dataverse in early 2022. When a project is near its end but not entirely completed, it's hard to have clear takeaways, but I wanted to close with these lessons I've personally learned so far. Discovery is not just a patron issue. Hidden collections may be more about cataloging and closed shelves than minimally processed archival collections. Plan practically, dream big. The initial 3 deliverables I mentioned earlier were smaller than what some of my colleagues wanted once they had heard the ideas. But I was consistently asked by well-meaning folks to add new elements. When doing something new and staking that newness on Black history, it was important to me to have something concrete at the end, which we will be able to do. The final takeaway I learned was to seize opportunities, but not to grasp power too tight. This project came from research I had originated and a project plan I wrote myself, but in working with my colleagues, I realized that as much control as I might instinctively want to hold on to, there would be fantastic new ideas and new possibilities the more people I invited in. There are many people across my library who I could not name in this brief presentation who assisted with this project, and I want to thank all of those colleagues as well.